Time to continue. So, going to parties and getting spike punch. Kid drives, has an accident, and he's arrested. And then in today's world, medical marijuana or recreational marijuana is an issue. And you could certainly have a problem with that. And so he drove under the influence and got stopped by the police. Is it illegal? And so I looked this up because more of it's happening. Certainly, alcohol is a problem, always been a problem, as far as a criminal activity on page 20. And it doesn't really matter how old you are. Drinking and driving, bad idea. And it's even, the amount that you have to register is less if you're under 18 than if you're over 18. So under 21, you blow more than 0.02, you'd be in trouble. 21 or older, 0.08, and if you go to CDL, 0.04. So we have no sense of humor with drinking and driving. Whether, it was your fault or not, that's when as a parent, I want to say you go to a party, something happens, will you just call me and I'll come get you, and we'll have a no argument zone. We'll discuss it in the morning. But I would rather have you do that. And certainly the more offenses, you lose your license. And I think it's interesting. You have to have, on the 5th offense, then you lose it forever. Possibly should have been before then if you weren't doing what you needed to do for yourself. And the fines get bigger. They teach, I do remember them teaching this in driver ed. But marijuana, it's interesting. In Massachusetts, MGL 90, and that's the site 241A1. When marijuana is involved, any amount of marijuana that was in the driver's blood or urine while he was driving will establish that the driver was under the influence. Any. I got an email the other day from an agent saying one of his commercial insureds, one of the employees is under medical marijuana. And what about driving? I said, just happened to look this up for my personal lines class, but any. I might not want this person to drive anymore. Any. Yes, ma'am.
Is this
currently in effect in Massachusetts? Any. Now, whether they'll change that, whether they can change it to a certain amount, but
it stays in the blood.
yeah, I know. That's what I always remember hearing when I was a kid. That it does stay in the blood a lot longer. So if you're using it for medicinal purposes, you'll always have it in your blood. So I would drive very cautiously. Certainly. So I don't know what they're going to do, but right now, any is a problem. And if you refuse the breathalyzer or the test, then you're going to lose your license anyways. So they might have to rethink this, but at this point in time, this is the law in Massachusetts. So, and interesting thing is, it can be a criminal offense. It can certainly screw up your insurance capabilities. But from the standpoint of your insurance product is pretty much there for most of the situation. Under the 2008, the only problem for coverage is PIP. So, and that's been part of PIP forever, driving under the influence. If you get injured, we won't pay for your injuries under PIP. Under the 2008 Mass Auto Policy, if you had MedPay, we would pay for your medical bills under medical payments. But we'll pay bodily injury. Criminal, you can, go to court for it. You can even get vehicular homicide, but we're going to pay for bodily injury, and we pay for collision. So the only coverage you lose is PIP. And if you lose your license, we will get rid of your policy for you, correct? Because the 2008 Mass Auto Policy allows that for a cancellation during the policy period. And from what I've heard, you lose your license, bam, you lose your insurance. Then you have to put the car in somebody else's name in the family. And it all works well until what? You get your license back. And then we're going to lose physical damage probably. We do realize that whether it's a 2008 or 2016 mass auto policy, built into the cancellation provision, after we discussed that, this provision is in the policy in 2008, that if the driver's license of anyone residing in your household who usually operates your auto has been under suspension or revocation, we may suspend coverage for that person under what? Any of the optional coverage parts. That means parts 5 through 12 have just disappeared for Munchkin, who lost his license. And can Munchkin lose his or her license and mom and dad never know? Sure they can. Sure they can. How will they find out when Munchkin's driving the car, has an accident, and the company denies the claim? Yay. Back in my day, what the companies would do when somebody in the household was listed as an operator, lost their license, they would immediately attach the endorsement suspension of operation so that at least mom and dad would know, which I think is fair. Unfortunately, companies aren't doing that now. At least not all. And when there's an accident, they look, kid doesn't have their license, they've lost it, mom and dad don't know, because most mom and dads, would not let Munchkin drive if they knew he or she had lost their license, I think. Now, that's going to be deadly. So, got to be careful about that. And then reduce Part 4 to what we're required to sell. How much are we required to sell? 5,000. It's been 5,000 since what, 1927? At least BI has gone up from 510 to 1020 to 1530 to a whopping 2040. But 5,000, somehow in the 20s, I think 5,000 PD went a whole lot further than it goes in 2018. So if a kid is driving, he or she might be a listed operator, but the company can invoke. It's in the 2008 policy, it's in the 2016 policy, so problematic. Now, 2016, we exclude under the influence of the operator from medical payments too. And somebody in class a while ago said, yeah, I used to tell people, driving under the influence is not covered, is not excluded under MedPay, so you should buy MedPay. I don't think that's a good selling point. I'm just thinking, hey, you're going to lose him. But finally, after all these years, we built in the exclusion there too. But all the other coverages stay. But then if you lose your license, again, you go back to, we can invoke no optional coverage in Part 4 to what we're required to sell. So, and under 2016, the mass auto policy will now let the company cancel if any driver has lost their license, not just you, the named insured. Now, this might be something as an agent I need to talk with my companies about. Come on. Why should mom and dad, can we exclude them? Which theoretically, if you're not licensed, y'all shouldn't be driving. Really? I know. Well, the problem is they're on the policy, they've lost their license. We can cancel the policy in 2016 because it says we can. If one of my kids or my brother-in-law who lives with us loses his license, can I lose my insurance? Yes. Yes, I can. Why? Because it says so. And actually, the law has always said this. Always. It's just, when Victor Finikas was the legal counsel for the Division of Insurance and worked with AIB, he put a little bit of love in the policy, or at least a little bit of conditioning, but he's been long gone. So you're going to have to argue with the company about keeping the policy in force, because this is horrific. And I can see, show me that clause in the policy where you can deny all coverage, and I'll make sure that Munchkin doesn't drive, or that miscreant. But to make me lose my insurance, just because somebody in my household, I guess it's time for that kid to leave home. I don't know. Or that brother and sister-in-law to find a place to go. You wanted a good reason, you got one now. Get them out of the house. Which is actually decades ago, because my daughter's driving record was so bad, I lost my umbrella policy. My agent said, well, you could tell her to leave. I said, well, that's a bit drastic. Let's laser her out of coverage. I can go down that road. She's over 21, I don't really care. But, you know, now it's like you're going to have to tell them to leave the house. So, you know, when we add stuff to the policy, sometimes it's not always good stuff, and we tried, but it just wasn't happening. We got some things changed when they put out the 2015, but, you know, we had to pick our battles, and we lost that one, sorry. So you're going to have to talk to your companies and be proactive. Come on, let's not do this. And again, the 2016 still says, after all the cancellation stuff, oh, by the way, if we haven't canceled the policy, if this person is driving, we can deny coverage. I really wish they'd use the endorsement so that the named insured knows. If the named insured knows and lets an operator drive that has lost their license, well, then I don't care. But sometimes we don't know. Because privacy laws don't let us know all the stuff about our family members that we used to be able to find out. Okay, they go to college, yay. Get them out of the house. Boom. You're going to rent a U-Haul because they're going far enough and they want to furnish their dorm room. Does the Mass Auto policy cover you when you rent the U-Haul? Well, it depends. What kind of loss are you going to have, Irene? Because yes, it does, but it depends on what you want to activate the policy for. So page 24. Mass Auto Policy 2008, Part 4, we will pay if you or a household member is legally responsible for the accident. Can you be driving a U-Haul truck and be legally responsible for an accident? Yeah. You know, as long as you have the consent of the owner. Well, if it's rented to dad and dad's driving, let's assume he's got the consent. Part 5, we will pay damages to people injured or killed in accidents if you or a household member is legally responsible again. Part 6, occupying someone else's auto. Is a U-Haul box truck an auto? Yeah. Part 7, 8, 9, well, now it talks about other private passenger autos, other private passenger autos, other private passenger autos. So in addition to your auto, we will also pay if you or a house to other private passenger autos are being used by you or a household member. Is a U-Haul box truck a private passenger auto? I'm not going to, no. Well, that's your idea. Where did poundage? Is it a private passenger auto? Do we define private passenger auto in the Mass Auto policy? No, we don't. Have we defined it in a court case in the fair Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Yes, we have. But as far as all the other coverages, is a U-Haul truck an auto by definition? Absolutely. 2008, 2016 has the same definition, page 25. Auto means a land, motor vehicle, trailer, but does not include trains. Great. A vehicle you live in. No, that's not what we got. Farm tractor, but even that's an auto when it's what? On the road. Any vehicle not subject to motor vehicle registration. Is a U-Haul truck subject to motor vehicle registration? Yeah. So a truck is an auto by definition, but auto, that little four-letter word, is really a big concept. Is an auto necessarily a private passenger auto? Ooh, now you got more words. I think a U-Haul truck is a type of auto, but I can't go down the road of it's a private passenger auto. So I got to have a little problem with that. But on page 25, there was a court case in Massachusetts that had nothing to do with the Mass Auto policy, but it had to do with what is a private passenger auto versus what is a pickup truck. And in this court case, the court determined that a private passenger auto was not a pickup truck. So if a private passenger auto is not a pickup truck, what hope do you have for it to be a U-Haul box truck? somewhere between slim and none, I think. So again, we don't define it in the auto policy. In some companies, when we're looking at collision and comp, and you call up and say they're renting a pickup truck, will collision and comp go? A lot of your companies will say yes, because they look at Rule 27 in the manual, MAPE manual, it used to be the AIB manual. Anybody know what Rule 27 is? It's the definition of private passenger vehicle. And the first thing it is private passenger autos, such as sedans, coupes, station wagons, and then pickup trucks that are either under 10,000 pounds or have a physical damage rating symbol and not used for delivery. But that's in a manual, got nothing to do with the policy. So I'm gonna assume that U-Haul truck ain't gonna get collision and comp out of my policy unless I've talked to the company and they have given me a vote of confidence and a yes, and I want that in writing, which is email. And I'm thinking you ain't gonna get that. So, is a motorcycle a private passenger auto? That has its own rule in the manual. Does that make a difference? I don't know. I don't know. Motorhome. Could you put that on a personal auto policy? Yes, you could. Is it a different rule from Rule 27? Absolutely. I don't know. So don't ask me that question in writing, because I'm just going to say, ask your company. Because Irene don't know. And Irene had been told by at least one company that she neither pay, Irene doesn't pay claims. I know this. Even I might say no, would say no actually, to motorcycles, motorhomes, and pickup and U-Haul trucks. So when my brain sees the term private passenger auto, it does not show me a picture of box truck. But it doesn't matter what Irene's brain thinks. So probably going to have a problem with physical damage. I highly suggest whatever extortion fee that rental company wants to charge you for when you bring it back broke. Especially you watch them in Boston in September or August. They don't know how to drive these critters. Little teeny roads and short bridges. So I've got parts 1 through 6 and 12, but 7, 8, 9 going to be a little bit of a problem. And the 2016, page 26 and 27, same issue. Though we add more words, Part 5, we will pay damage to people who are injured or killed in an accident if your household member is legally responsible for the accident and such accident involves the ownership of an auto. Great. Is a box truck an auto? Yes, it is. Did you realize, and I never really thought about this, that the personal mass auto policy never restricted me to using an auto with parts 4 and 5? Didn't we just assume that's what it was for? So if I'm riding a bicycle and I go out on the road and a car doesn't want to hit me and swerves to avoid me and hits a tree, am I responsible for that accident? Me being on my bike and swinging out into the road, like, are there not rules of road? If there's rules for kayaks, are there not rules for bicycle riding? Yeah. Yeah. Now, I just always assumed that when the operator of that vehicle came after me, I'd send it to what policy? Homeowners. Not necessarily. Because 2008 just says I'm legally responsible for an accident. Bingo! Was I legally responsible for that accident to that car? Absolutely. Now, at least in 2016, I've got to be using an auto. Yeah. Interesting. Never thought about that. But I don't care, because I've had homeowners and autos, so it's not a non-issue to me. To me, the auto policy should only have to do with autos. But it will. Part 4, well, I'm hoping Part 4 goes with you. You never know. We will pay if you are a household member of someone using your auto. Well, you rented a a box truck. It's not your auto. We did argue about this, and we get another sentence thrown into 2016. Under this part, we will pay for damage or destruction of the tangible property of others caused by an accident and arising from the ownership, maintenance, or use of an auto. By who? It doesn't say. We have disconnected who isn't insured from this. Just saying. If you look at this, I mean, if you really look at this, it's a nebulous sentence. It has no noun. It has no person that gets this coverage. We could say, we could make Leo buy Part 4. And only he has to buy it, and the rest of us will enjoy it. Because we'll just go back to Leo's policy. Could that not happen? Yep. Whatever, we got something in writing from AIB saying it follows you, so that and a pound of sand will get you covered somewhere, but hopefully it works. Part 5 definitely says you or family member using an auto. So I'm hoping Part 4 goes with you. It's kind of a disconnected sentence. Who knows? Who knows? But at least auto, if it works for you, auto includes a box truck, life is good. And again, Part 6, occupying someone else's auto, again, box truck, but again, like the 2008, Part 7, 8, and 9 only respond to other private passenger autos. So I don't think any addition of the auto policy will guarantee damage that happens to the box truck when we rent it. And I teach the personal auto policy. Under physical damage, it specifically says that physical damage will only respond to other private passenger autos, comma, pickup trucks, comma, vans, comma, trailers. So it's more specific and obviously won't go to box trucks. So, alrighty, page 28, dorm rooms, off-campus apartments. If Munchkin brings the car to school, does garaging change for that vehicle? Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. Because we don't care where the owner lives. We care where the car sleeps, predominantly throughout the year. And if you go to school, whether it's high school boarding school, because I live next to Exeter, New Hampshire, and they've got high school boarding, or college, if that car is there, that's where it is most of the year, in which case that's where it should be garaged. And are they still uninsured under their homeowner's policy? And does it make a difference if they're in a dorm room versus an off-campus apartment? So, page 29. Regarding MAPE, and that's all I can look at because every company makes their own cute little manual these days, and frankly, I don't care. You do. But MAPE, and I think most companies still use what AIB used and what MAPE says, that garaging is based on where the vehicle sleeps. And so when they bring it to college, that's a new garaging. Now, rule of thumb, in the MAPE manual, when you have out-of-state garaging, it's territory what? 9. When you have voluntary carrier, is it necessarily territory 9? No. I'm hearing some companies, when they rewrite their manual, they have different territories, which, makes sense. Because if you go to college in Orono, Maine, or you go to college in New York City, is there a little bit difference of driving exposure? Just a little. Or Hartford, Connecticut. I mean, really. It never made sense on that. So now, voluntarily, companies, different, depending on where you're going, can have different rating territories, which makes sense. So MAPE, territory 9. Off-campus apartment. HO 91, dorm room. Insured means you and residents of your household who are your relatives. Related to me. And living in my household. Do they have to live in my household every second of every day? No. And historically, the 91, this definition was in the 84, was in the 76, was in the pre-simplified. When kids go away to college, are they still insured under my auto policy? I mean, homeowner's policy. Yeah. Historically, a lot of court cases and just common law situations. Does this get overblown sometimes? Could this even be when they're in an off-campus apartment? Are they still a relative of, and insured under my policy? They could be. How long have they been in that off-campus apartment? Is the dorm room an insured location? Definitely. Because any part of a premises not owned by an insured, if my kid is still an insured, is the dorm room where they're temporarily residing. Yeah, so the dorm room is definitely an insured location. Where is my contents covered? Anywhere. Can I bring it all off my premises and be covered? Yep. But when it's usually located at another insured's residence, do we limit how much we want to pay? Yes. Is a dorm room a residence? I don't know. I never, it's a place to stay in. Do I know I get at least 10% of covered C? Yeah, because it says so. That if they're still an insured, we may limit a liability for personal property usually located at an insured residence. Well, are you going to restrict dorm room as a residence? I don't know. Usually located. Well, 8 months out of the year versus 4 months out of the year, I don't know. But in today's world with coverage A so high, how much do you, when you have a homeowners 3, special form, how much contents coverage do you get for free? 50%. But because you all add what? Replacement cost loss settlement, most of your companies, but not MPIUA, most of your companies take an old rule and say that if you buy replacement cost contents, we bump the coverage C from 50% to 70%. That is not an ISO rule. Not anymore, should I say. Was it an ISO rule, I think, in '84? Yes. It was done away with in '91, but companies liked it. So they kept it. So, and a company can do what they want. So now if you get 70% of the dwelling limit for coverage A, does that give 10% of that much more? Probably in most of our cases, if they limited the kid to 10% of coverage C, that's going to be enough in probably 90% of your insured's cases. And if not, you can buy more. There's an endorsement to buy more. Off-campus apartment. Could it still be an insured location under mom and dad's policy? Could the kid still be an insured under mom and dad's policy? And that was a couple of court cases, one at least, where the kid was last year of med school, had a wife, had a kid, parents were paying for the apartment, paying for med school. The only thing they didn't buy was a tenant's policy, had a loss, got back to mom and dad's policy. Should that have happened? Probably not. But it did. If I know you're in an off-campus apartment, the first year, what is the difference between that and a dorm room? Second year, same apartment, you scare me. And you scare me because I don't know what the word temporary means. You can still argue insured because it's all a state of mind. Who's paying for the apartment? When you graduate, what's happening to that apartment? Mom and dad are stopping the free ride. Where are you going then? I guess I'm going back home until I get a job. I don't know. So I definitely would worry about the 10% of coverage C in an off-campus apartment, and I really worry about the second year. If you don't come home in the spring. Well, I can't, because I'll lose the apartment. I'll leave all my stuff there. Ooh, I don't want to go back home anymore. I like having my own place, my own rules. Excuse me? I know. And their laundry, because it's cheaper to do it at mom and dad's than it is to go to the laundromat. But, so, in Massachusetts, it's easy to get a tennis policy. Because we got MPIUA. Somebody emailed me, what about New Hampshire? Nah, we don't have Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, no fear plan. Rhode Island, Mass, yes. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, no. You got surplus lines. That's what you got. So in Massachusetts, I can get your tennis policy, and I really, if you're staying in that apartment, the second year, I think you should have a tenant's policy. I really do. I'd rather have at least one policy I know will pay a claim than having to fight with and maybe a second one. That doesn't, just because you have a homeowner's policy and your name on it, does that mean you're not an insured under mom and dad's? Not necessarily. But at least we have one we don't have to fight. But that one might invoke your parents' policy anyways and see what happens. So, HO 2000, 2011, well, we added more words. And actually, those words were created by somebody at ISO whose mean, rotten company denied a claim under the old language for the kid at college. So this person who I actually met in 2000 explained why he thought this language should be in the policy. And it made perfect sense to him. Oh, when I write tech talks, they all make sense until you email me and say, but what about this? Good point. Wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about this. Now I got to do another tech talk to bring it out one more. So when you write something, does it make perfect sense to you? And fails to make sense to the world around you? Yeah. And when I look at this, a student enrolled in school full-time, as defined by the school, not the student, because they dropped some classes. Could I be paying for full-time, part-time kid? Who was a resident of your household before moving out to attend school? What if they take that year abroad? And didn't Obama's daughter do that? And then that Blackish comedy was doing that too. And he said, no, you're not, so-and-so. So kids do that. Great. Well, they just take a year to find themselves, which might be a better idea than going into college and not knowing what they're doing. Which I wish I had done, because I went to college, got a degree in something that didn't do me any good at all. And then I ended up here. Maybe if I had learned something else, I wouldn't be here today. But I joke because it's the best thing to happen. But anthropology just was not big in the 70s. So, and what does this mean? Before moving out to attend school, does that mean they have to leave every fall, come back every spring? Leave every fall, come back every spring? Does anybody know what this paragraph means? I don't. I can look at least 4 different interpretations of it. And then, happy birthday at 24, you're no longer an insured under my policy. How insane is that? How long does health insurance last for kids? 26.
Or if you go to school for 10 years.
Right? Happy birthday, you're no longer an insured. We created an endorsement for that. This is just wacky language. Wacky language. It was written by somebody who, in his mind, it would have made sure the company paid the claim that he had. I think it created a can of worms, and nobody knows what it means, so I need to ask my company, what does this mean to you? And can it mean one thing to company A and another thing to company B? Absolutely. It's all about interpretation. I need to know. And, they could be going on. They change the major from doctor to lawyer. They like going to school. I would be a professional student if I could. I really like school and learning. I do. If I had won Mega Millions, I would go back to law school at this ripe old age, just because I want to know how their brains think. Yes, I do. So, I don't know. I have to come home every spring and fall, working continuously for more than 1 year. So I definitely, you got an off-campus apartment, think, it's just safer to have a tenant's policy. That way I know, and I don't have to argue. And it's interesting in Massachusetts, is it beneficial to you now more than ever to have auto and home same company? Yep. Absolutely. And does the company look at who a household member is under the auto policy? A lot stricter than they do maybe under this language, which could be beneficial to us based on the wackiness of the language. You want me to make sure I keep mentioning this munchkin on my auto policy? Doesn't like that language either. So off-campus apartment, I know if you still remain insured, you're going to have a 10% limitation. I can just feel it in my bones. But if it's an off-campus apartment and we are on the second year of it, I definitely need to make sure. I don't care if you're still listed on the parents' auto policy. That's the auto policy. So, if you're still an insured and the company is going to impose a limitation on page 32 for contents, I can buy more, but again, most of you have companies that already make me have 70% for covered C. So 10% of 70% with high-valued homes is probably enough, And can I use this endorsement with the HO 2000 and 2011 to guarantee that you are still an insured under my policy? It was designed for when you're 24, happy birthday, you're no longer an insured, but the way we worded this, can we make this guarantee you're still an insured for an off-campus apartment? Sure could. Sure could. It's up to the company. So, name and address. I can give the address of the apartment. So, I need to know what the company wants to do and how they're going to interpret it. So, HO4, parents that are spending, how much does it cost to go to college these days? What's an extra couple $100 for a tenants policy? I mean, really. So, yeah, and more and more I get this question in the last few months, I guess, because it's, just we went back to college. It never dawned on me because I was in a dorm room. That when you get the apartment, do people like to rent to young people? No. And so we want the parents. I don't care if you're 18. You ain't got no worldly goods out there. We want the parent on the hook, correct? So, what if when the parent signed the lease, how many of you are insured say, I just signed the lease? Does it become an exposure for the parents? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and instead of just putting the tenant's policy in the kid's name, do we need to think about this? And make sure that the parents have insured status somewhere from a liability standpoint. So is parent just a cosigner like for a loan? Which is a good thing to be. I'd rather just be a cosigner for a loan than on the title to your car. Because now I'm an owner and that's, I guarantee that the rent will be paid. I guarantee the loan will be paid. That way I don't have the same legal status. But if I have, signed the lease in addition to guaranteeing that I'm going to pay the rent, I now have a liability exposure that goes along with it. Do we think about the parent? So is it an insured location under their homeowner's policy? And pretty much whether it's a 91, 2000, or 2011, the definition is the same. It's not their residence premises, correct? What's the definition of residence premises? Which I didn't put here, but is essentially the same. 91, 2000, and 2011, it's the place where who resides? You. Who's you? Under a homeowner's policy. The named insured is you. So mom and dad have a homeowner's policy because they own a home and they're used under that policy. If we put the tenant's policy in their name, is that correct? No, because they don't live there. And if they don't live there, is the kid uninsured? No. MPIUA already had a court case on that in Massachusetts. Resident relatives, if I don't know where to find this, I'd have to go way back. Can I go way back? Oh, sure. No, I can't. I didn't go. Oh, insured means residents of your household. If I just have a policy in my name and I don't live there, I don't have a residence premises. There's a whole 30-some-odd page white paper on that by Big I National. And if my household is in Chelmsford, if the kid lives there, then they're uninsured. If I buy a tenant's policy in Cambridge, I don't live there, are they uninsured? So we got a little problem with that whole concept. So, if issued to parents to protect them is the kid uninsured, I think you're going to have a problem with that because the parents don't live there. So I don't know what it does. I don't know whose contents it covers. And if it's issued just to the kid, do the parents get liability coverage out of this? No. Because they're not relatives insured under the kid's policy. The kid lives there. He or she could be a valid insured, but do the parents find insured status? No, because they don't live there. They don't live there. What I need to do in emailing with somebody, she did this, but it's easy when you work for the agency and you want it a certain way. She got the tenant's policy in her name and the kid's name. Yay. As it should be. Because that way, I know as a parent, I'm an insured. I'm on the deck page, the kid does live there. Either that or I need to be an additional insured, correct? I want to make sure I have liability coverage for the goings-on that might go on there. Again, I'd rather just be a co-signer from the standpoint of paying rent. And I think it's interesting that landlords want the parents to be co-signers for rent and to, guarantee damages to the rented premises. How does your homeowner's policy deal with damage to the premise you occupy? Not well. When in doubt, light a match. Yay. But if you have a wild party and they tear up the joint, does the homeowner's policy pay that? No. Because every time we sell property damage liability, every policy that does this has an exclusion for property you own, and then secondly, property that is in your care, custody, and control. The homeowner's policy gives back damage by fire, smoke, or explosion, but not wild parties. So, got to be careful about that. And so they come home for holiday break. They either have a tenant's policy if it's an off-campus apartment, or the company still finds them as an insured. It's the first year in their apartment, or they're in a dorm room. During the time they're home visiting, their apartment or dorm room gets broken into and everything worth more than $1.98 is stolen. Which could happen. Does the parents' homeowner's policy pay this? It should. It should. Where is contents covered? Anywhere. Might I have an overall 10% limitation? Yeah, but I can be stolen from anywhere. And is there a restriction for off-premises theft at another residence? Yeah. Occupied by uninsured, but we've always been kinder and gentler to kids than we have for parents. I can rent a cottage for a month, take a few days to go up to Bar Harbor. That cottage is broken into, and the company could deny theft in that cottage I rented. But kids, if the property of a student who is still uninsured, that's key. Are they still uninsured? If they're still uninsured, under the HO 91, they could be gone for 45 days. Under the HO 2000, they could be gone for 60 days. And under the HO 2011, they could be gone for 90 days. I don't think any Christmas break or holiday or winter break is longer than 60 days, never mind 90. And if you have a dorm room, when the semester is over and you graduate to the next year, don't they make you leave the dorm room and take all your crap with you?
Yeah.
So I don't know anybody that gets to leave their stuff in the dorm room. Now, I went to a college where kids from away left their stuff, but they didn't leave it in the dorm room. They left it where? At least where I went to college, in the storage area. Is that a residence? No. So is there a restriction? No, there's not. So I think the HO 91 45 days is sufficient. I mean, how many winter breaks are longer than 45 days? So, and if they have a tenants policy, really won't matter, because whether I'm home or not, I have theft coverage. I would prefer you break in when I'm not home, because it really feels like a violation when you break in when I'm home, and then it gets scary. So whether I'm home or not, tenants policy pays. It's the add another residence, then 45 days, 90 days, or 60 days. Okay, well, it's been another. People out there, don't go away, because we got to do our second sign-in at 10:51. So this is the second of numerous sign-ins. Yay. And after you have downside your screen and typed your name in, then we can all take a wonderful 10-minute break. And I got to find out when lunch is for everybody. Oh, that's wrong. From the beginning. All righty. Okay.